working. Okay. 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 Did you guys know that already about Lucas? You knew. Okay, that's cool. All right.
I'm Dominic. I'm also a junior, and my favorite flavor of ice cream is Neapolitan.
Neapolitan, the three. That's very good. All right. And then, oh my gosh, the most popular name in the school. Yeah. With a T or D? Okay.
And I was the only one in all my grades like that.
Oh, really?
And now it's like 4 today.
Really? Okay.
There's none in the rest of the class,
Okay. Okay. That's hilarious. Let me just open something real quick. And I guess we are waiting for, let's see, one of the, Emma, is that right? Okay. Let me just double check one thing. Hopefully she will be here on time. It's about right on time. What I'll start with is just intro stuff here. Okay. Hopefully she'll. Oh, is that her walking? Okay, we'll wait for her to come on in. Come on in. We just did our intros. I think you know all the guys, so that is for you. So my name is Eli Quo. I'm the main instructor for this class, and I think we just did some intros. Everyone described some trivia about themselves that maybe other students didn't know. So you can introduce yourself and tell us something unique about yourself. Trampoline. Oh wow, are you like a prospective Olympic trampolinist?
No.
Yeah.
But I do go to
Oh, that's very cool. That's very cool. Awesome. Okay, well, these notebooks that we have in front of you are yours, and I put in the first 4 lessons in here, and they're for you to write on, to participate, take notes, and do whatever you want to do on there, whether you're doing math or writing notes to yourself. So we're going to walk through this as we go through the class. Just to introduce a couple things, this is some background. How many of you guys have peers or siblings who took the SAT before 2016? Lucas? See, that took it before. What was the SAT before that they told you? Did they tell you about it, or it used to be? Or Jeremy, did you know a little bit about it? Okay, Dominic. It's out of 2,400. There's still 3 sections, but they've condensed the SAT down. Well, there's 2 math sections. There's with calculator, without calculator, and then there's a reading and a writing that are combined into one score that's worth 800 points. So this page that's right in front of you is just kind of giving an overview of those things. You can flip that open to the next page where it says in March of 2016. It's the redesign. It's kind of weird though, because long time ago, before 2004, the SAT was on a 1600 scale. They switched to this 2400 scale for about, it was more than 10 years, from 2004 till 2016. And they switched back to the 1600 for some reason. So I guess they got tired of calculating. So the interesting things that are different that they've implemented are that the passages now include graphics such as tables, graphs, charts. Unfortunately, no photos or caricatures. That would have been more fun for us. The math is required, obviously. In the reading section, it is 52 questions in 65 minutes. So that's kind of interesting there. It's still enough time for you to go through it. So you can write that in there, write in there. So for the writing section and language test, you'll look at each sentence, and sometimes you're looking at paragraphs. Once in a while, they'll have a graph or a graphic that was related to it, to whatever topic that they're talking about, and they'll ask you about it. There may be something that you need to interpret from there. It's not overly scientific, it's not overly data-driven, but they'll ask you about it, and usually it's just a simple graph. They're all multiple choice, they're based on the passages, they're accompanied by tables. This one is 44 questions, 35 minutes. So then there's two math sections here, and I always have to look at it to make sure I get the numbers correctly, but for the no calculator section, that's the third section. That's 25 minutes, 20 questions. And some students are like, oh man, I can't do it without a calculator, but it's actually easier math. From what I've seen, students generally, when they get to the calculator section, they think, oh yeah, this is gonna be really easy now with a calculator, but it's actually a lot harder. And the stuff they give you, I mean, you can do it without a calculator, but it's usually stuff with decimals that need, calculator to be more accurate. That section is the fourth section with the calculator, and it is 55 minutes, 38 questions. Cool. All right. So, yeah. Oh, you know what? That was like some weird misprint. I saw that. I was like, hey, that's kind of weird with that graphic thing. So just ignore that. That was just a printing error. Yes.
So the no calculator math section, was it 20 questions in 25 minutes or the other way?
It's the other way. It's 25 minutes, 20 questions. Yeah. The one with calculator was 55 minutes, 38. So let's just move forward from there. On the second page, you're talking about scoring here. Usually you hear people talking about scoring, and there are three terms that they talk about: raw score, scaled score, percentiles. Does anyone know the definition of what a raw score is? What do you mean by that? It wouldn't be out of 600. It would be like, yeah, so like for that math section that had 20 questions, if you got 20 out of 20, that would be a raw score of the no calculator section, right? Or for the writing section, 44 out of 44, or 40 out of 44. If someone got 40 right, their raw score would be 40. So raw score just represents the number of correct answers per section. Number of correct answers per section. So the SAT no longer penalizes wrong answers. So you can guess away without a penalty. It used to be, if any of you guys had peers or siblings who took it for 2 years ago, they'd take off a quarter point. But this is a huge change because people were afraid to guess on the last question or something like that. And they would say just leave it blank. But now you can guess away, so there's no penalty, right? Well, it wouldn't help you. Now it wouldn't hurt you. But it's like you have a 25% chance of getting 3 points. You don't lose anything though. Previously, yeah. Previously, it was like a 75% chance of losing. And actually, it was different. The old SAT had 5 answer choices. This one now only has 4. So that's the other thing here. These equations that you see right in front of you talk about how do we get the complete raw score. It would be the reading section plus the writing section equals the reading and writing raw score. And then the math with no calculator plus math with calculator is the math raw score. That's how they do that. Anybody need me to repeat anything, or are you guys are good? Scaled score is probably what you guys are more familiar with. Does anybody want to give me their definition of scaled score? Scaled, well, what do you mean by all of them added together? It is the scaled score, yes. The 1,600 is basically converted from raw score into scaled score. So, for example, if someone got 40 out of 44 in the writing section, and they got, let's say, 45 out of 52 in the reading, it gets converted into an 800 scale. So, simple definition here, scaled scores represent converted raw scores. Really quickly, I want you to flip this page, and on the next side, you're going to see the conversion tables here. And on the far left, you can see raw score. It goes from 0 to 29 in the first set of columns, and then it goes from 30 all the way to 58. That 58 represents just the math. If you were to add up all of the math questions, you would have a total of 58 math questions. If someone got all 58 right, that would convert to an 800. You can see the next column next to it. You guys all see, here, let me, you guys get what I'm talking about, what the 800 is? So that's how they do that. If someone had 52 correct on that far left in the reading section, they would get a raw score of 40. You see that 2 columns to the right of that? That's a 40. That would be a perfect raw score in reading. And if someone got 44 correct in writing, they would also get a 40 for writing. So if you had 40 plus 40, that would be 80. Multiplied by 10, that's an 800. So that's how they convert the raw score into a scaled score. Question there, Jeremy?
Why don't they just go by raw score? Get like 15 tables, like if you look at the math section, there's a 10 different number, and you can't get anything between the two numbers. Why not just go by raw score?
I don't know. I mean, they probably did a lot of research on how they converted the total number of correct into a scale of 800. And I think they wanted to stay with this 800 scale because colleges are used to measuring students based on this 800 scale per section. Because the SAT's been around forever. I mean, there's a saying that I made, well, there's a saying that you might have heard, the 2 things that are guaranteed in life are death and taxes. I made up one, which is there are 3 things guaranteed in life: death, taxes, and the SAT. So, but anyways, I mean, the 800 score has been around for ages. I mean, if you were to ask your grandparents, did you take the SAT? They said, well, a lot of people took it then. You know, I took it too. They'll tell you it was on an 800 scale back then, believe it or not. So that's how I would put it. Let's go back to the previous page real quick. Does everyone get how this conversion works from raw score into scaled score? So lastly, it says you'll receive a scaled score in reading and writing, and math. Okay. Last but not least is percentiles, which represent the percentage of students whom you scored higher than. And I think for a lot of people, they ask about percentiles, but which one do you guys think is the most important of these 3? Raw score, scaled score, or percentile? Well, that's true. Which one do you think the colleges care most about? Scaled score. I would go with that. The reason why, and some people are like, why is that? Well, it's because in areas like math, like if you miss just 1 question from 58 to 57, takes you to 790. But let's say you missed 5 of them, so it goes from 58 down to 53, and you get a 730. Most people think, yeah, 730 sounds pretty good. That's probably only about the 92nd percentile. It sounds like a dramatic drop for just 5 questions. But I mean, in reality, if someone got a 730, that's a pretty strong score. But in percentiles, there's so many students who ace the math that it drops the percentile really low to make it like 92nd percentile. It seems like it's, oh, that's not very good, but it's still very strong. So, yes, go ahead. Percentile is the percentage of students whom you scored higher than. And then before you turn in your bubble sheet, The remember to fill in all of your bubbles. Don't leave anything blank. I know, Jeremy, you asked about it, if there's a risk of leaving it blank. You could leave it blank, but it's possible that you could have scored 3 points if you guess. Okay. Let's go from the scoring to actual lessons. We'll start off with reading comprehension. Any questions before we move on? Okay, let's do that. Let's move to page 12 here. Everyone should see where it says active reading at the top, right? Does anybody find reading comprehension challenging? You guys have all taken the PSAT, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't do badly, but it was still my first section.
Okay. Was there anything about it that you found challenging about it?
I don't know. For some of the questions, especially if you look back at the college board site, the ones that exist previously, some of them it feels like two of the answers could definitely be possible. Like I could make an argument for those.
Okay.
And then it only shows that group for one answer. I wish that it would show that this group is the one who chose this answer.
Okay. Okay. All right. Anyone else have, or do you guys like reading comprehension? Dominic, you like it?
Yeah. I find it
Easier. Okay. Lucas? Harder. Okay. Any similar feel there? Okay. I think I've heard that a lot. It's hard to look at answers and definitively say this is right, that is wrong. We will actually talk about that a little bit. Personally, when I look at a test cold, like sometimes I'll tutor some students, they'll say, what do you think of this? And it came from some copy of a test I'd never seen before. I'll read the passage and I'll be like, whoa, this is weird. Because sometimes they'll use something that's like old English literature and it's really different than modern English literature. It might have been written in England and it's a different style. The words they use were from a different generation.
One that I was like obviously a translated version of something that I think was written in Spanish.
Oh, that's hard. Well, yeah, it can make it hard.
It works, but it was a little weird.
Yeah, maybe it loses some of the cultural things that they're trying to express if it was in Spanish or something. So those are all challenges that people face. What I want to say is this: every person has their favorites and their least favorites in terms of the types of passages that you'll run into. But what we are all, fortunately, I guess you can call it fortunately for all of us, we all face the same passages. So it's kind of fair game for everybody. That's how I would put it. The technique that I want to introduce right now is called active reading, where you're actively asking questions. So active reading means asking questions. And let's write that in there for part B right there. Asking questions, not out loud, not literally asking someone, but asking yourself as you read. And the three most important things that you should have in the back of your mind are, number one, what is the primary purpose of the passage? And if you read through a passage and you cannot get across a primary purpose, then I would say the passage was not clear enough or it didn't sink in. The second one would be, what are the important examples? And a third question that you could ask yourself would be, what are the key characters, if it's a fictional, or persons, if it's quoting different people? Who are the key people in here? Did you have another question? Important examples, and then key persons. Did you have a question also, Jeremy, earlier? Okay. Yeah, Dominic.
What do you mean by?
So if it was like a scientific type of article, it might show you an example of, I'm going to make something up, like different types of sand under the ocean, and they'll give an example in the Atlantic, one in the Pacific. I just made that one up. So those would be, and you would need to know what is the difference between sand that is below the Atlantic versus sand below the Pacific. That would be an example there. So, and then key people, it might be an expert who is quoted who says, something about sand under the Atlantic, and an expert who talks about the Pacific. Or it might be two characters. I find literature to be challenging because they'll throw you into a story and you're kind of like, who's who, right? So you kind of have to go through a process of determining who's who in the passage. Last part here is talking about mapping a passage, which means taking notes. Don't be too voluminous, but mark things such as key line numbers and paragraph numbers. How do you know if they're key? Well, how many of you guys glance at the questions before going to the passage? Emma, you do that? Okay. She told you to do that. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So when you glance at the questions real quick, sometimes you'll see a line number, a paragraph number, or keyword. When you see that in the passage, that's something you should definitely mark. Because some people go into a passage and just read it cold, and they're just like, I'll read it for what it is, and whatever sticks out, stands out. You know, that's how I do it. But we should go in there with a strategy. So in your passage map, like I said, key line numbers, paragraph numbers, and words that were from the question. So mapping the passage just means taking notes. But don't write too voluminously, because we obviously don't have that much time to read through it. I'll ask this question before we go into a passage, but how many of you guys find that the amount of time allotted to read and answer questions is not sufficient?
No.
You guys are all pretty good at reading comp in general. Like you were saying, you like it. So if it is, I mean, I don't know if it is for anybody. I tell people you don't have to read the entire passage, because what you'll notice is the questions are listed most of the time in order. They might throw a curveball at you where they'll say on line 52 and it's the second question. You're like, what? But you could probably go through the questions and just go through the order of them. So you could just read half of the passage and go straight to the questions, and then glance through the rest of the passage to figure out the rest of it. Because some students, they'll read the whole passage and they'll go, oh my gosh, I just got through this whole passage. Now I got to go back to the front of it. I don't even remember that. But you guys seem like you're pretty confident in this area, right? Okay, so spend a minute here and go ahead and read this passage on the right, and we'll talk about it. You guys ready? Everybody ready to talk? On a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being hard, 1 being easy, how many people would give this a 5, a 4, a 3, a 2, or 1? The 1, right? Okay. Obviously, this is not a real SAT passage. The point of this is really more just to introduce reading comprehension and see how we break down this passage. Because if you were to put this in a nutshell, why did the author write this passage? That's pretty. That encapsulates it well. Emma said it's a review about the movie. I would agree. Because if this person disliked the movie this much, why would they spend the energy to write about a movie, right? Other than to provide a review, right? Something like a newspaper, yeah, a movie review or something like that, right? Because most people would say, most people, if they didn't like it nowadays, they'd just say, "Oh, thumbs down." That's all they would do, right? So um, let's break down the 4 paragraphs. What do you guys think are the most important things that this author mentioned in paragraph 1? Go ahead, Dominic.
That's gonna be.
Oh, I just asked Dominic. Yeah, go ahead. What do you think is the most important thing to note about paragraph 1?
On well, like line 6, sometimes that is just bad.
Okay, that is just bad. That's an important thing, but why is that?
Because movie,
Okay, movie is bad. Okay. Jeremy, did you have something else to add?
on my own, he said the movie was inspiration.
Okay, predictable and bad. So let's, Emma,
I'm gonna say, like, 8 to 9 for the left.
like a chemistry. Okay, those all fit. I'm gonna put that in there. So bad, predictable. Those are all pretty good notes there. Like I said, we're not writing a novel. We're just pointing out important things here. How about paragraph 2, Jeremy? What do you think about that one? Summarization of the plot, yes. And then is that the most important thing, to know the plot here? It is. I think he's adding a little bit more. Yeah, Dominic?
I thought that it was to show that the plot was very easy.
Plot is basic, cliche. Yeah. Predictable. Same idea as the first. So plot is basic.
Metaphor to make sure that was like, but it's so
Yeah, obvious points. Okay. Obvious. That's pretty good. Okay, great. Let's go to paragraph 3. There's a little bit more in this one. Lucas, what do you think of this one? Yes. I think there's more points that they're trying to get across. Emma, what do you think? Okay. I think that's all. That the first 2 points you made combined with each other, that the acting is bad. Or the actors are unmotivated. That's really what it's saying. Actors seem unmotivated. That's one point. Did you have another one, Dominic?
It was kind of similar that it's very like over like um like the symbolism of the canvas of that one.
Okay. Yeah. Jeremy, did you have another point on that?
No.
Okay. Let's stick with the first one, which is actors seem unmotivated, right? That's what I'd say for the first, from lines 24 all the way to about 30. That's pretty much unmotivated actors there. The second half of this is something else. So unmotivated actors. Yeah, so I would say bad directing there, because Winthrop is the director, and this writer gives a few points about, bad musical effects, workmanlike shots, mood lighting, music is saccharine swell, so bad directing. So actors. So I'm just abbreviating here. And I think it's conclusive at the very end where it's saying, hey, you don't even trust us to think this is a romance. I think we get that. But the two critical points are actors are unmotivated, directing is not very good. The last one's pretty obvious here. What do you think? What do you guys think of this one? Go ahead, Emma. Really cheesy, beyond this person's limits, right? So, too cheesy. Right, exactly. So I like what Emma said earlier also. If I was to give this a purpose, I would say it's a review. To review. If I was to give it a purpose here. I'd say, obviously for our discussion purposes, we were able to kind of write everything out and talk about it. Obviously on a test, you're not going to spend too much time doing that. You're just going to, if you see something important, you'll probably circle a word or circle a line number or something like that. But I think this is actually the most important thing, is to encapsulate the purpose of a passage here. Okay. So cool. That was very good. Let's turn the page and let's talk about golden rules of reading comprehension. Yes, because we're going to fill them out on the next page. We're going to turn a page, and there's going to be 3 and 4. And yeah, we're killing trees and not being environmentally sensitive, but yeah, that's why. So number 1 is why is more important than what, meaning that the purpose is more important than the content. Because by now you guys would probably have guessed that there's no such actress named Janet Bobenga. There's no actor named Fred Grange. I actually looked them up on IMDb because I was like, are these guys real actors? I've never heard of them before. And I looked at, there's no such thing as Janet Bobenga. There's no Fred Grange. I even looked at Margaret Winthrop. No such person. So it's all fictional. So what I'm saying here is why is more important than what. When you read with that intention that you're looking for the purpose, the why. That's the most important thing that you should be looking at. Because oftentimes SAT will throw unfamiliar names, unfamiliar topics, something obscure from science that you've never heard of, and you're like, what's that, right? The second one is keep straight who said what. Keep straight who said what. So the second one is keep straight who said what. Let me ask you this. How many different opinions do you see in a movie? None? Just one?
Well, it seems like at least at one point we find showed that there was kind of like a good thing there, but then it was kind of.
Which part are you talking about there, Jeremy? It's at the same. It's at the bottom of the next page. You can see it. You're the third paragraph. Yes. And what do you mean by that one, Jeremy? Kind of. That's not what I'm thinking. I'm going to read something to you. It's on line 25. It says, though some have charged that Bobenga often coasts on her star power, investing little of herself or her talent, I usually find that she does much with what little she is given. How many opinions are there? Those are 2 opinions. So we've already concluded this is a movie reviewer. There are probably other movie reviewers who think she doesn't do much with what she usually gets. This person is he actually gives Bobenga some credit for her previous works. So there's slight difference of opinion there. Do you guys see that? So that's what I'm saying. Usually on the SAT, what you're going to see as different opinions will be one person writing a review of somebody else's book. And so there's 2 different opinions, one of the writer of the book, one of the reviewer. Another example of 2 different viewpoints would be paired passages. When you see that on the SAT, paired passages will have one passage which is, the first passage introducing a topic and may even offer a solution. The second passage will offer, look at the same topic but have a different angle on it. So you have to keep straight who said what. So the third example of that would probably be, besides book reviews, would be if there's a comparative scientific passage and it includes two quotes from two different types of people. So that's what they mean by keep straight who said what. All right. Good. So let's turn to the page. We'll talk about rules 3 and 4 here. Rules 3 and 4, I've kind of mentioned a little bit of this, but when we were talking about answering questions, who wants to volunteer and share how they answer a question? Dominic, since it's easy for you, so.
Yeah, so I usually, I read the question usually before I read the passage, but then after I read the passage and I'm on the question, I eliminate the issues with you for me that I can tell that are clearly not right, and then the issues that are definitely more plausible to look back at the passage.
So you kind of go to the answers before you go back to the passage.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody here go read the question and then go straight back to the passage? Depends on the question. Okay. Usually not. Okay.
I usually read all the questions. I have to look on those passages because I usually find that when I read passage, I look at the questions. I find myself reading the passage.
Okay. 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 I'm going to introduce something, and I'm not going to say it's in stone, but I will say that for rules 3 and 4, 3 is saying predict before you peek, which doesn't mean, oh, the last one was C, this cannot be C, but it means, and 4 is the answers in the passage. What they're saying here is that it is better to go back to the passage before you look at the answers. And it's better to think of what you, or make a conclusion of what you think the answer is before you look at the answer. The last step would be to look at the answers and say, oh, that matches what I was thinking. The reason why I'm sharing this is because when there's 4 answer choices, 3 of them are definitely wrong, right? 3 of them are definitely not going to be right. And if you give any credibility to a wrong answer, where you read it and you're like, that sounds kind of interesting. That B sounds pretty good too. And C, is that as good as B and A? What happens is you're giving a little bit of credibility, but you should be kind of going at the answers with an angle like, I want to eliminate wrong answers. So if you went back, let's say to line 15, this word is used in this way, and you go back to line 15, you're like, okay, I know how they use this word. You have something in mind so that when you look at the answers, you're like, no, that's not what I was thinking. B, that's not what I was thinking. C sounds kind of similar. Of course, it's not going to be word for word what you thought of. But then you're like looking at D, and then you're like, well, that's probably not. And it makes it much more easier to say yes and to say no. The second thing I wanted to say about answering questions, instead of just looking at the answers and saying, okay, that's A, B, C, D, right? Say in your head, yes, no, or maybe, okay, when you read an answer choice. Because if you just leave it as, I don't know, right, then that's still leaving possibilities. When you have too many options available, that's when some of us were saying, well, I can't totally tell if something is, the answer. 2 of them still look like they're the right answer, right? But if you kind of go in with this attitude, like, I want to say no to as many as I can, and I'm going to say yes, no, or maybe to each one when I read it, then you'll be more confident when you choose. Okay, good. Let's try some of these questions on the next page here. Let's go with number 1 here. Jeremy, you want to read that one?
One, the phrase I already have one from the
Hey, did you hear what I said? Go back to the passage, unless you can recite it for me.
So it says, that's all I'll say about this one. Not because I don't listen to it like this.
What does that mean?
That means that the file is simple. It means that you can't, by saying very little about it, you can fix it that all it is.
Yeah, it's so simple. Okay, that's better. Now, I want you to go through the answers and give it a yes, no, maybe whenever you read A through D. Go ahead.
Hey, let's say you were trying to do it before.
Yeah, don't read B until you've given a yes, no, or a maybe. Because there's no reason to keep it alive with nothing. Does everyone see what I'm trying to get them to do here? Because if you don't give it a yes, no, or maybe, you're no better off than when you just read it. So yes, no, or maybe.
So maybe, that's the core performance of that film stars.
You remember what you said like 30 seconds ago as to what does I already have mean? Simple. For which one? Okay. Yeah. So our best answer is C. In fact, yeah, that was a good example right there. I know I kind of put you on the spot, and we're doing live, like technique here. But the reason why I kind of interrupted you for a second, I said, do you remember what you just said? You said the plot is too simple. If you look at A again, is that what A is saying? No. So you really can have a yes, no, or maybe type of approach to it. It's not an absolute yes, like 100%. It's probably like maybe yes and maybe no. And there's like the other maybe is like I don't know kind of. But you're really saying maybe yes, maybe no when you say that. But it makes it much more obvious, right? Because by the time you get to C, you're like, yeah, that is a simple storyline, simple plot. Yeah. That's C. Okay, great. Emma, you want to do number 2 for us?
Sure.
Go ahead.
According to the author, the performance of the actor in that Bobina in the film Blossom is, and then if you go back, it says the film has stars the Bobina on star power, investing little of the film for her talent. I usually find that she was much of what it was given. Unfortunately, it seems to be that.
Right. So.
It's kind of what they let down.
Okay. Good. I like that analysis. Now, when you go through these answers, give us yes, no, and maybe.
A requires written telling.
Okay.
B typically awkward.
Okay.
C uncharacteristically disappointing.
That's what it is. A lot of people get confused between C and D, which you didn't even read D, but what is the real difference between C and D? Right. It's either right. What was the author coming from in the first place? Usually thinks this actress is pretty decent, but this is unusual, so it's disappointing. Yeah. Good. Did everyone agree on that one? C? Okay. Good job. All right. Excellent. So the 5th rule is dealing with passages and dealing with the answer choices. We've kind of talked about this already. But with number 5, the rule is read the questions before reading the passage to find key lines, paragraphs, and phrases. So number 5 is read the questions before reading the passage to find key lines, paragraph numbers, and words. So generally speaking, the passages have anywhere from 800 to 1,000 words, and generally 10 to 11 questions, depending on which one. Paired passages typically have around 1,000 to 1,200 words, and usually have 10 or 11 questions. They don't really vary by much. Yeah, sometimes it's really not by much, really. It's just 10 to 11 or uh, just 10 to 11 for regular passages. They don't make it significantly longer. The four topic areas are ones that you will usually see on SAT reading. First is prose fiction. It's usually a narrative passage. Usually it's the first passage that you see. That pretty much has been set by the SAT. The first one is a prose fiction. The other three come in different orders. Sometimes it's natural science, sometimes it's social studies or social science, whatever you want to call it, and sometimes it's humanities. Humanities, the difference between humanities and social science might be economics, government. It might be looking at something historical, whereas humanities might be like, this is a revival of this type of art, impressionist art, or something. You're like, I don't know what that is, but yeah, but that would be more of a humanities passage. But those are the four topic areas. We don't have much control over. In fact, we have no control over what topic they have. But just that when you look at passages, they have different purposes. And I will tell you, like prose fiction, the purpose is always to narrate a story, whereas the other ones, such as social science, and humanities, might be just to explain or introduce something, whereas a science passage, a natural science passage, is usually going to be to explore or analyze something. And so those are somewhat different. Once in a while, they might be to compare and contrast something. There are 6 types of questions, and this is probably the most important thing, because when you look at the questions of SAT reading, the wording, the way that they phrase the questions is always the same, regardless of what topic they give you, whether they're talking about, a fictional movie or something scientific. So let me introduce these, and I'll mention these phrases whenever I talk about reading. First one is called global, which deals with the passage overall. The second one is called detail, which is more of a fact-finding type of question. The third one is vocabulary and context. I'll write these up in a second, but the third one is vocabulary and context, which asks about the contextual synonym of a specific word. You'll have one-word answers as the answers, or you'll have definitions for it. The fourth one is called function, which asks why, but never uses the word why. Instead, it'll say something like, the author uses the word cheesy in order to. And you're like, what is that asking? It's really saying, why does the author use the word cheesy? The fifth one is called inference. And these are really tricky because it'll ask what the author is suggesting, or what the author might agree with, or what the author would conclude. So it's less stable language. It uses words like might, or probably, infers, conclude. And you're like, I didn't talk to the author, I don't know. The sixth one, which was introduced with the new SAT, is best evidence. Okay? And what the best evidence questions, you'll see these a lot on the SAT, they will have something where it's like, which of the following is the best evidence for your answer to the previous question? So if it was number 17 that asked the best evidence, you had to get number 16 correct, because if you got number 16 incorrect, then your supporting evidence for whatever answer you chose is probably not going to be the right one on number 17, because you're trying to support your previous one. So that's called best evidence or support. So those are the 6 most common types of questions. On the next page is like a simple paragraph. It's not a full length. But what I want you guys to do before we read this is read the questions, and then we'll talk about this. So go ahead and look at the questions for a second before you read it, and then we'll talk about that. if you guys want, you can answer the questions. If not, we'll do them together. How many of you guys already started on it? Let's talk about it real quick. For number 3, Lucas, did you want to read that one for us? Well, this is a detailed question, guys. So the reason why it's a detailed question is they're kind of like fact finding. They're like, why did they mention this issue that you can stock them from widely grown climates? Before you go into those answers, do you know where the answer is located in the passage? Very first sentence. Okay. And then what was it that allowed them to be able to do that? Great. So our best answer here is that's correct. B is correct. A is tricky because it's talking about agricultural changes, but B is the right answer on that one. Good job on that one. All right. Questions on that one? We're good? Dominic, you want to do number 4? So before you do that, I want you guys to note the phrase in order to. This is a function question, and it's asking why without using the word why. That's a classic situation. Tomato. So if you were to answer this, why do you think they mentioned tomatoes with 6%? Sacrifices to make transportation. I like that. That's a really good one. Now let's go through the answers. Let's see what our best answer is here.
So A is demonstrate that grocery stores that items don't climate, not that one. Provide an example of an item covered that is not a grocery store. Century ago, not that one. Establish correlation between having certain periods, other tomatoes suitable shipping, maybe D is support the claim that there are drawbacks associated with the increased selection of available grocery stores there. I would say that
That's right. That's exactly what you said. You said sacrifices. Drawbacks are sacrifices. So that's the right answer on that one. Questions on this one? You guys are good? I like how both of you guys did it. You guys came up with the answer. When you saw it, it popped out. It was very obvious. So good job on that. We're going to move on to the writing section. Now, the writing section, I'm not going to go too deep on the parts of speech. You guys seem like you guys are really strong in that. They're not going to ask you for parts of speech or identifying, is this an adjective or is this an adverb? But just knowing those things is good. On the second page on the right, there are some phrases. Do you guys know what antecedents and modifiers are? What's a modifier first then, Emma? So it could be a word or a phrase or a clause. So you could say, my fast car, or my car, the one over there, right? That would be a clause that would describe it, you know. So that would be, those would be modifying phrases. For antecedent, does anybody here want to share what an antecedent is? Does it ring a bell from middle school? Okay, what do you think, Jeremy? Correct. Yeah. So if you said Mary and Jane went to the store, she drove. You'd be like, who? Mary or Jane, right? But if it said Mary and Bob went to the store, she drove. We know it's Mary, right there, because that's the antecedent for it. They're just saying that, like, 2 words that I notice that often get very confusing are it and they, right? Because they're very vague, and a lot of people use they to sound gender unspecific, but it's actually improper to say that. It's better to say he or her rather than they, or he or she. He or she rather than they would be more proper. So he or her would not be right. It would be he or she. So, all right, the rest of these I think you guys know, right? I'm not going to go into those. On the next page, I'm just going to talk about this real quick about the writing section. The language section will test many concepts such as subject and verb pronouns. It will also test our ability to rearrange sentences, so organization and style. It will not test our ability to identify parts of speech, and it will not test it will not spelling and identifying parts of speech are not going to be tested. So the would occur as section 2 on the SAT. It will always be 35 minutes long and have 44 questions. There are 4 passages. That will ask you to improve paragraphs in terms of grammar, style, and organization.